Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you, jam-packed episode. If you're listening to this one, there's 3 separate recordings here. One for National Signing Day. One talking to Danny Wuerffel with a deep dive into the Florida Gators coaching search that he was part of, from Lane Kiffin to Jon Sumrall. We get into the deep dive right here with Gator great quarterback Danny Wuerffel. And then, to wrap us all up, getting to know Jon Sumrall with Jake Weinstock, editor-in-chief at Fear the Wave Collective and co-host of the Wavecast, covering their Tulane. So lots to get into, jam-packed episode. I'm going to release all of these separate as well, just in case. But this Wednesday was busy with National Signing Day. I was just going to have, Danny and Jake, those episodes kind of married to each other, and then somehow, lo and behold, signing day just kind of sneaks up on us. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm definitely going to do an episode of that too. So mega episode here. One more time. You can listen to them all separately as well if you just want to check out each and every separate topic right there that I discussed on this episode of Gators Breakdown. So however you want to do it, bite-sized morsels or just one big gigantic episode right there waiting on you in your Gators Breakdown podcast feed or on YouTube if you want the video version, all that good stuff. So to get us started, everybody hit that like button, subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown if you haven't done so yet. Leave some comments what you think about new coach Jon Sumrall, all these new Gators coming in as well, the coaching search that we get into with Danny Wuerffel. Go ahead. Plenty to discuss right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. As I said, jam-packed episode. If you want more jam-packed action, go to gatorsbreakdownplus.com. Join Gators Breakdown Plus. Get in that Discord. Very lively, of course. New members popping up each and every day. Really good community we've built there on the Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. Also, get your ad-free episodes of Gators Breakdown starting at $3 a month. And then, of course, you still can go bet. A lot of action still happening right there at MyBookie, of course. Yes, college football coming to a close as far as the regular season. Conference championship week is this week, and you can get in on the action right there. Georgia, Bama one more time. Ohio State, Indiana. Get in on the action right there at MyBookie. Not just football. All the other sports out there as well. And there's casino games. All the action right there waiting for you at MyBookie. One account, one wallet. Bet on sports all weekend. Then go play some casino games, some slots if you want to. You don't have to switch apps. You don't have to jump to another platform. Straight up action right there at MyBookie. As far as the NFL action, you get on Super Contest. The survivor pools there as well. Bet it all at MyBookie. And if you're new to MyBookie, use our promo code Gators and get your first bet up to $500 fully covered. Make your play. If it doesn't hit, you get it right back with the bet back bonus. So sign up at mybookie.ag with promo code Gators and claim your bet back bonus. All right, let's get into National Signing Day here. That's where we'll start. Gators came in with 18 commits today, signed 15 of them, one walk-on and offensive lineman Corey Brown, the brother of Vernell Brown III, putting the Gators at 16th on the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings and 13th on the Rivals Industry rankings. I had no idea what to expect. No idea. Of course, coaching change. You just don't know what to expect with a transition class. The Gators had 19 commits when Napier was fired. And so far, only one legit decommit right now with running back Carson Baker. So maybe in many ways, the early signing day saved Florida here because some of these guys maybe felt locked in and the timeline was compressed after Sumrall was hired. Not really much time to pivot. But it isn't that easy. Maybe they hung on because they thought Lane Kiffin would be the guy, or maybe they just wanted to see who the next head coach was in general and were leaning towards staying at Florida unless it was just a really terrible hire. Also, you really could come down to just loving the logo, loving the orange and blue, and, of course, the money. We can't forget about that. Not going to dig our head in the sands. That's college football right now, of course. Of course, the money plays in. That's a factor as well. So all those factors come into play, likely fit in some ways depending on who the recruit is. Either way, big day for Florida to be able to get most of the class to stick together. And we'll see. We'll see if it gets even better or even worse in the coming days. But it would not have surprised me to see a lot of deflections, to see the class just completely fall apart. Not because Jon Sumrall was hired or anything. I'm just talking about firing a coach just in general. We saw what Penn State's going through, and most of that because they can't find a coach right now. But it could have easily just fallen apart, but it didn't. In the programs that made new hires, Florida's only behind LSU in the rivals ranking, as LSU checks in at 11. Florida's 13th there. And the same on the 24/7 Sports Composite. LSU comes in, they check in at 12th. Florida 16th. Napier's transition class with 21 commits was 18th. Mullen with 20 commits ranked 14th. McElwain 21st with 21 commits. Muschamp had a class of 11th with 19 commits. That, of course, was coming off of Urban Meyer. But the world right now is different. For Sumrall and the program to be able to keep this class mostly together after the season we just had, NIL, transfer portal, money flowing everywhere, big programs in the college football playoff coming after some of your top players, only for these guys to stay. We'll get into that. Remarkable achievement for a program where the head coach has only been here a few days, isn't the biggest name on the market. All the noise of boosters and administration misalignment, all the chaos of the last few weeks and days, of course, didn't really have much of an effect. So credit to former staff as well for getting it started, helping in these days as well. Not lost on me, of course, the money side of this too. So credit to Florida Victorious and the boosters to show they can come through maybe when even needed more than ever before, given the circumstances, keeping this group together, especially on this timeline. Good work done. Good work. Really, really good baseline transition class. We don't know what we'll get out of transition class. You got to have players, and we'll see down the road if some of these guys fit what Jon Sumrall wants to do. I would assume. He watched film as quickly as he could, had a lot of interviews, as he said, with these guys. Probably went a long way. Wanted to keep this class together. Some good class. We thought this was a pretty good class. What would it do, even with the old staff counting down, with a good season, counting down to early signing day? Well, there was no good season. You fired Billy Napier. You hired Jon Sumrall, and most of the class sticks together anyway. So credit. A lot of credit's due. It could have been so much worse. I didn't know what to expect. We hadn't heard of a whole lot of planned decommitments. We didn't see a whole lot of decommitments between the firing of Billy Napier and the hiring of Jon Sumrall. So it likely wasn't going to be a doomsday scenario today or on early signing day. Certainly could have even been just a hair worse, a little bit worse than what it was today, but no. Pretty good. We'll get into all the details. Let's go through one more time. Go through the list of players that are now Florida Gators. 15 of them signed a letter of intents. Davion Gross, highest ranked player in the class, 49th ranked player overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite. We'll get into the storyline of some of these guys as well. Just go through the class right now. CJ Brona, cornerback, second-ranked player in the class, 110th in the country. He's a 4-star. KJ Ford at edge, another 4-star there for you. Justin Williams, athlete, right there in Gainesville, 5'11", 190, 157th player in the country. Jarayla McCoy out of Mississippi, another 4-star coming in at 176 overall. Quarterback Will Griffin, 4-star, 223 overall. Kendall Guerville, big-time battle at the defensive line, 237 overall. Tyler Chokium, offensive tackle, rose, his stock just shot up as the season went on after he signed or after he committed to Florida, just kept rising and rising and rising. Certainly good evaluation there early on. 239th ranked player in the country. Hezzy Kent, the tight end, right up the road in Brunswick, 257 overall. Malik Morris, 270 overall. Defensive linebacker. Marquez Daniel, wide receiver, 323 overall. Chancellor Campbell, offensive tackle, 496 overall. Nare Carr, 601 overall, the interior offensive lineman from IMG. Desmond Gree from Timberland, South Carolina, interior offensive lineman, 719 overall. Javari Lucas out of Belgrade, offensive tackle, ranked back there about 1,100. So there's you guys who signed the letter of intents. We'll get into some more of the storylines of the guys who didn't make their decisions yet, still considered commits. And Caden Hall, CJ Hester, Kakua Amua. Caden Hall safety, CJ Hester corner, Kakua Amua tight end. But let's go to some storylines. Let's go to some storylines of this National Signing Day here. And the big one, as I mentioned, the top of the class, Davion Gross, out of the state of Texas. Thought he might end up committing to Oklahoma before he committed to Florida. Then, of course, the coaching change happens. Who knows what's going to happen? Oklahoma didn't stop. Pursue. Didn't really know what Gross was going to do today, but he made it known. He was going to stay in the Florida Gator class. The best prospect in the class. So I think he can just play running back if he wanted to as well. But a versatile piece at wide receiver. Certainly going to move him around, I think. Who knows how this new staff, whoever the new offensive coordinator is going to be, and how they're going to use Gross. But you certainly got your options on how you want to use him. One of the best overall players in the country. I mean, it was key to keep him. Pure football player, 6'2", 290, and fast. So there you go. I mean, that's what you want. What do you college football playoff team in Oklahoma? As I said, I mean, you had to really, really dig in here if you're Florida. Do your work with Jon Sumrall and this staff. Still get the top guy in the class. Big win in the trenches, of course, Kendall Wuerffel. He signed with Florida. Florida kept him. Back then, it was over Georgia and Texas. Texas didn't quit, though, by the way. Missed most of his senior season with an injury. Still good to keep him in the class. Of course, Will Griffin at quarterback from Tampa. High school numbers, 12,300 career yards, 143 touchdowns, 37 interceptions. This past year, about 2,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Getting your quarterback there. Another one that we weren't really sure what was going to happen because Texas A&M, another college football playoff team, was pursuing Kevin Ford, KJ Ford. Some late buzz with Texas A&M. They might be trying to flip him. Maybe even felt good. But the Gators pulled away. Got big time guy on the defensive front. CJ Brona. This was trending in the last few weeks. The cornerback, of course, 4-star, might be leaving Florida. Certainly made some other visits, mainly being Ohio State. But announced he was going to stick with Florida, and then on signing day, ends up making it official. He's going to stick with Florida. One of the fastest players in the country. Previously committed to Nebraska. Flipped to Florida. Big time pickup. Big time pickup there for the game. And big time being able to pull him in at the end. Justin Williams, of course, 4-star receiver. Became the first high school player in Florida in more than 20 years since Devin Hester to record over 1,000 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards in the same year. This season, took the Bobcats to the state semifinals. Had to get the hometown kid. Versatile at that position as well. Or on offense. Big time get for the hometown team, for the hometown player. So looking at the class a little bit, 3 wide receivers, 2 of those offering position versatility, as I mentioned, with Gross and Williams. And then you got the big-bodied Marquez Daniel. So add this trio to last year, VB3, and we saw what he was able to do this year. Dallas Wilson, hopefully healthy. We got a taste of what he could do. Nashawn Montgomery. You know, all 3 of those guys were near the top of last year's class. You had Muis Sankara, who played a bit this past season. You add that trio now for this year's class, good young core receivers do the Gators have now. And then the defensive front addressed near the top of the class. You got KJ Ford, Jarayla McCoy, Kendall Guerville, or Florida. Of course, I'm sure you get Jon Sumrall, a defensive-minded head coach, and he says, hey, let's go take a look at that recruiting class. KJ Ford, okay, yeah, yep, let's go with him. Jarayla McCoy, yeah, Kendall Guerville, hey, man, three, look at this recruiting class. I got these three guys here at the top of the board already committed. Let me go to work. And go to work he did. KJ Ford, Jarayla McCoy, Kendall Guerville, all sticking with the Gators. And we know in the SEC, you need these horses up front. Keep it on right there with these guys committed. Jon Sumrall making Zoom calls and FaceTimes as much as he can. And I'm sure this was a key part, a key group of keeping this class together. Mentioned the three receivers, but also these three guys up front on the defense. Yeah, I think you got to like what you got there. Will Griffin, you got a quarterback for some quarterback depth. You got to have a quarterback almost in every class. But then three playmaking style receivers, and then three defensive players up front. Look at near the top of the class. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Offensive linemen hopefully come down the road in that regard. But if you're going to tell me as a Gator fan where I would want some of my top talent to be, as far as the class rankings itself, wide receiver, quarterback, and defensive line, that's a pretty good start. Signing 5 offensive linemen, which was the plan from the old staff all along, it held up here. 4-star Tyler Chokium, the rest, 3 stars. So we'll see what that means down the road. But Florida wanted 5. The old staff wanted 5. Apparently the new staff was okay with it as well. Or, I say staff, but General Manager Dave Caldwell, we got to start throwing that into the mix as well. John Summerall. And then I don't know how much input. Maybe got to go do some research and some interviews of what Brad White did and anything, of course, in the last day or so. But we'll see. But when I say staff, I guess I just mean really Jon Sumrall, Dave Caldwell right now. So keeping on with the storylines here. Class could take a hit as 3 players remain unsigned. Mentioned those guys earlier. Caden Hall is one of those, but looks to be sticking with Florida by signing on Friday, but never know with time on the table, giving other teams a little window, still having a chance to get him. But right now, Caden Hall looks to still be in the orange and blue when it's all said and done. DB CJ Hester might be wavering. Iowa, Auburn pursuing there. And the Hawaiian tight end Kakua Amua never planned to sign on Wednesday. Instead, mentioned Thursday or Friday as potential dates. He visited Washington and Auburn after Florida fired Billy Napier. So, Huskies right there on the West Coast trying to, looks to be a little more active there. We'll see if he sticks or not. And then for maybe not done for the Gators and adding some players, maybe add one more, not guys who have been committed or, of course, just signed on early signing day. But maybe Jon Sumrall out there actively pursuing Dylan Purter. Safety currently committed to LSU. Purter pledged to the Tigers back in March. Made 2 visits to see Sumrall at Tulane following his LSU commitment. Since taking the Florida job, Sumrall has stayed in touch with Purter, who plans to reveal his decision on Thursday afternoon. So, of course, if that happens, it'd be Sumrall's first new commit of the class, first flip of the class. Flipping from LSU. It's a pretty good storyline right there. Pretty good storyline. So, right, there you go. Getting you caught up on early signing day. We got such a loaded episode. Certainly going to not dive in as much as we can. Will Miles sent some good notes about the class. Maybe get those in here too. Just overall for this class. He goes, talent was much more spread out this year. LSU, Oregon, Bama, Notre Dame range, and this is from the overall scores here, or the average scores here. from LSU, Oregon, Bama, Notre Dame range from 93.61 to 92.67. That's your top 4. But then Tennessee's number 5 in that regard, all the way down to number 13. Pretty close. For Tennessee at number 5, for Miami at number 13, the score goes from 91.84 to 91.08. So LSU to Notre Dame, 93.61 to 92.67, almost a whole point. And then that's just 4 teams. And then from 5 to 13 are grouped in 91.84 to 91.08. Will said didn't get below 92 until the 8th team last year. So, yeah, a little more spread out, as Will said. Even Washington with a score of 89.59 has a 5-star. Texas Tech has 2 with a score of 89.42. 5 stars are way more spread out. For God's sakes, Maryland, Utah, Houston, and Vandy all have 1. So we'll get in here a little bit with the early signing day and kind of a big look at some trends right there and maybe talent spreading out a little bit. All right, good stuff right there from Will Miles and right here from the Gators on early signing day. Let's keep it moving forward. If you're listening to the mega episode, let's keep it going. Gator great, Danny Wuerffel, right here on Gators Breakdown. And all right, here we are on this episode of Gators Breakdown with Gator great Danny Wuerffel, Heisman Trophy winner, national championship quarterback, statue right outside the swamp, joining us right here on Gators Breakdown. Danny, you shouted at me Monday evening as we were walking out of the press conference, and I was like, who's that voice? And I was like, it's Danny freaking Wuerffel calling my name. So 13-year-old me right now cannot believe this, by the way.
Oh, man. Well, it's good to be with you. I've learned a lot in the last, I guess, 6 weeks or so, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it. But I've gotten to know and listen to a lot of different people covering the Gators. And I just want to give you a shout out. Every time I've heard you talk about anything, and there's been a lot of things to talk about recently, and a lot of things that get people riled up. I've just always felt that you covered things in a fair way, in a kind way. You didn't shy away from stuff, but you also just did things in a way that I really respected. So, one, good job, and then secondly, when I talked to a couple of people, I'm like, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I'd love to kind of share the story of how I experienced this coaching search and who should I talk to? And like right out the gate, people are like, oh, you need to talk to Dave. Talk to this guy, Dave. He's a good guy. You'll like him. Go for it. So you come highly recommended, my friend. I'm glad to be here with you.
It means a lot. Means a lot coming from number 7 right there. So certainly glad we can hook up here. By the way, so I knew first of all, Gator fan growing up, of course, watching Danny. And then I knew you were an even bigger deal when you had one of these made.
Ooh.
I was a big starting lineup fan growing up.
Okay.
Too many of them. And then they didn't really make college ones, but then they had this little Heisman edition that they came out with. And there was the one Danny Wuerffel there. So
there you go.
Unopened, mint condition, all good stuff there. All right, Danny, of course, we're getting together on the hills. Jon Sumrall getting hired as head coach for the Gators. And as you mentioned, just so much that went on basically since the time Billy Napier got fired. And of course, really heated up the last couple of weeks as well with the search coming to an end. Who would it be? Would it be Lane Kiffin? Would it not be Lane Kiffin? And then if it's not Lane Kiffin, where would Florida go after that? So first of all, how did it start where you got involved with the search, and how involved actually were you with the search?
Well, back several weeks back when the coaching change was made with Billy Napier, I just wanted to help. I think a lot of Gators care passionately and want to do something to be able to do it. And I thought, maybe there's something I can do in this process to help Gators football. I originally thought maybe, I have developed relationships with some of the players. And I thought, maybe when there's this interim time, maybe I could be a voice to help encourage some of our players to stick around to not kind of mentally check out and give the new coach a chance when the new coach was hired. So I went and talked to Scott, and I said, I'd be happy to help with anything, whatever you think. And then he came back and said, hey, I really would like you to help be part of this search for a new coach. And so, part of me wasn't sure what that meant. I said, well, I'd be happy to give you thoughts. And he goes, no, I really want you to be a part of it. And then I remember saying, if I'm going to be a part of it, though, I don't want to just you go pick a coach and then tell people I was a part of it, and then I have to bless whatever you pick. If I'm going to be a part of it, I want to be a part of it. He goes, no, Danny, I want you to be a part of everything. And so really, Scott Strickland, me, and assistant AD or associate AD, Duke Warner, were part of the entire process from beginning to end. I mean, dozens, maybe hundreds of Zoom calls with different people, working closely with Chad Chatlos at Turnkey ZRG. We also led the search for the GM. So it was kind of two completely different searches going on at the same time. We had some of the board of trustees that we would report to back from time to time that were very supportive. And so it was a long, amazing thing. I experienced things I had never imagined I would to land us where we are here with Coach Jon Sumrall.
Absolutely. So I don't want to dwell too much on the Lane Kiffin saga and all that. It's been talked that ad nauseum, but one reason you wanted to get together and you got with me Monday evening before we were able to leave the room there is mentioned there's just so much misinformation out there. Information that's just been wrong. That's just floating out there the last couple of weeks, last couple of days about this Florida coaching search. Now, of course, Gator Nation had its sights set on Lane Kiffin being the next Gator head coach, but it didn't happen. So there's obvious questions, why didn't it happen? What happened? A lot of rumors out there and, of not wanting to work with Scott Strickland or booster involvement, misalignment behind the scenes at Florida. So where did the misinformation really stand out for you?
Well, it really is weird because I was involved in all these conversations and, there's a strong point where we were all feeling really positive about Lane Kiffin. All the signals he was given to us were very positive. I was on multiple text threads with Lane. We had visited with him and then gone to his house and had great conversations. And all the indications we were getting were very, very positive until a while ago, it just sort of kind of went dark. And then you start trying to say, hey, man, we'd love to have you at Florida and what's going on. And so I think at some point it was just incredibly wise because we realized that was not going to happen to be able to continue, which we've been doing all along, the search, because you got to have all your people lined up. And so some of the things that just really made no sense when I would see them online would be, and I think some of the misinformation perhaps were things that long before we actually talked with Lane were things that maybe he had mentioned to people that he was concerned about, and I think, he had heard word that we were moving towards a GM model and we're going to hire somebody. And I think, he had heard that Scott Strickland meddles all the time in the coach's football business and tells them how to run his football team, which I thought was actually hilarious because Scott doesn't meddle at all. In fact, all of us.
That was what I got from it too, as well. With the whole, at least with Billy Napier, I was like, from what I could gather, was pretty separate.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we probably all wish he would have meddled a little more, right?
Right.
So
that was the question after the press conference of Billy Napier getting fired. It was how much conversation was there about hiring an offensive coordinator and all that, and kind of to your point is I've go kind of let my coach be the coach.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that was just something that somebody had put in Lane's mind. I didn't sense any of that. Scott and Lane's relationship seemed great. I was on a text thread with the three of us, and I could probably show you hundreds of texts that were just hilarious and funny and really good. I think we did a great job of presenting and pursuing Lane Kiffin as the coach. And for whatever reason, I've got some thoughts of my own. I think his son was a big part of this decision for him and where he wanted to go and play high school football. I think that was part of it. And some other things, there was a lot of talk early about the GM situation being a problem for Lane, but we cleared that up right away. So that was not an issue. But Lane just made a different choice. And I think what's frustrating was we all, us included on the inside, were very optimistic for a while, as well as the fan base. And so then you're thinking, man, this is great. There's rumors that there was some kind of signed MOU or something that's not true. And so it was just a tough thing, I think, for people to experience being so excited about one particular person And then when not only does that not happen, but then you see what seems like a desperate pivot to someone that seems very similar on paper to the last coach that no one's excited about. So there's just so much emotion out there. But through this whole process, Jon Sumrall, from the very first Zoom that we did with him was just outstanding, and we met with him a couple times in person, and it was just really, really powerful. And the way that he talked about leading people, the way that he talked about seeing offense at Florida, which was obviously a big question for me, and then just the way that he takes feedback and listens and tries to grow. He's a very unique, different person. I think, as he said, no two people are alike. And I'm super pumped. I think even a lot of Gator fans in the last, week or so, when you see more and more of the things play out at Ole Miss and LSU, I think there's even some Gator fans that are even like, man, maybe we dodged a bullet there. Who knows? But I do know this. I am fired up about Jon Sumrall. We led a really cool process that got us to John, and I'm really thankful he's our coach.
Good deal. Good deal. One more thing I want to go with the Kiffin thing, and then I do want to go a lot more into John as we move forward. And look, maybe fair or not for me, but also I said fair or not. Since the sights were set on Kiffin, that if Florida didn't get him, Florida would lose control of the narrative. Now, look, I know a lot of the process has to be kept secret. And, I guess, was there anything Florida could have done differently or better manage the misinformation that was out there? Like, I know not everything can be out there. And when you're running a search, you want to be quiet as much as you can. But was there anything behind the scenes that maybe could have helped lighten the situation once the pivot of Lane Kiffin to Jon Sumrall, whoever the next person was going to be?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything else we could have done. We were just pursuing as fast as we could. And doing our best job, going at kind of the tier one candidate, if you will. Some of the things I think that added salt to wounds at that time were stories like Lincoln Riley reached out, and we didn't want to talk to Lincoln Riley. So, I saw that all over the place, that Lincoln Riley and his agent, Trace Armstrong, reached out, and Scott Strickland didn't even take his call. So, if I were a fan and I heard that, I'd lose my mind. Because he's an amazing coach, and you play quarterback for him, and you have a chance to win a Heisman Trophy. So I'd be crazy mad in that situation, except for it's not only not really true, it's the opposite of true. We reached out as many times as we could to talk to Lincoln Riley. We'd love to talk to Lincoln Riley. Who wouldn't? But for whatever reason, maybe he wants to stay at USC, or I don't know, maybe he has another job that he'd lined up that he hasn't announced yet, but he didn't want to talk to us. And in fact, Trace Armstrong's not even his agent. So he was, but he's not anymore. So that's just patently and false. There was another one that hit right at that same time that, Turnkey was so frustrated with us that they fired us. And that was a silly untruth. We had a great relationship with Chad all the way through, beginning to the end. I was texting with him today, and we're all just really pleased with the process and working together. So I think there was multiple things that happened there at that time that just made people really upset. And so, I don't think there was too much we could have done differently. If you have any suggestions, I'd be happy to hear it. We all love feedback and how we can do different. From where I sat inside that journey, it was just really, really impressive to see how everybody operated and to see how Scott led. And then when I open up my phone and look at Twitter and see him just getting maligned every which way, and for many things that really weren't even true, made me feel bad for Scott. I don't get paid by Florida. I wasn't paid to do any of this. I'm not a PR person on their behalf. But it was an impressive process. And I'm really pleased with where we landed.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because part of that was, it did seem like up until, I guess, last Friday, maybe it was, where even people I talked to who may or may not be in the know, but it did seem the narrative at that time was Scott was doing a pretty good job of leading this thing. And that had kind of really been before we knew there was going to be a pivot away from Kiffin and who the next person was going to be. And then, like you said, then all of a sudden it just flooded in once we got word that, hey, Kiffin's no longer considering Florida. It is going to be staying at Ole Miss or going to LSU. And then you started seeing this long laundry list of stuff. So I guess it was just part of the journey. And like I said, I know the situation you guys are in. You can't really update everybody with every little twist and turn and nook and cranny of a coaching search. But I guess that's probably what played into it a little bit, what little breadcrumbs there were. And then when there actually was information, the information was it's not going to be Kiffin.
Yeah. And I mean, he's an exciting guy. He's an explosive offensive guy. He was like, probably the top coach on everybody's board this cycle. And so, and then when you get excited about that, and when people and fans and all of us even too, when he's indicating and giving you signals that like he's wanting to come, you feel great. And then when that doesn't happen, it's frustrating. So, I mean, I get it. I think we all lived through that. There were times where I would say to Scott, I'm like, Scott, you think we should say something here? You're really getting people are hating you. Like there's petitions to get you fired and they're going to protest you. This isn't the world I live in. I live in a world where at Desire Street and the Wuerffel Foundation, we trust each other. We all work well with each other. We're not trying to sabotage people, and there's no agents trying to sneak the media towards their, it's a weird world out there. And he's just Danny, Gators are passionate and Gators want to win, and we haven't won. So they're mad. I get it. They're mad at me. I get it. When we win, Gator fans will be happy, and that's the only thing that's going to change it. And so I just have a lot of respect for him. I think he's got really thick skin. I think he's borne a lot of the negativity, which it goes, when you're at the top. I was a quarterback. When things went well, I got all the praise, and when things went bad, I got a lot of blame. And he's the AD. That's just how it works. He knows that, but I just felt bad for him because I thought he did a great job.
Now, Daniel, I will have to be honest, and listeners have certainly let me know. They've heard you on the various shows throughout the week, and some don't trust how the administration or the UAA handle things behind the scenes, and maybe feel like you're being forced or put in the position to play defense here. Now, I know the type of person you are. A lot of people know the person you are and conviction in which you speak with, but what do you say to people that may have doubts or feel like this is some sort of damage control?
I mean, that would fit a narrative if you thought that happened and this is happening. You would think that. I don't know what else to say to him. I was there, and I'm telling you the experience that I had and the things that I thought were true. Trying to think if I'm trying to slant anything for any reason, but I really don't have any motivation to do that. But I get it. I was very frustrated with a lot of things, and I think a lot of Gator fans are frustrated. And when you have gaps, you fill in the gaps, and then you got to sort of make sense of that. So I don't blame anybody, but I am who I am, and this is how it went.
I'm kind of glad you said that too. That's where I went to. Is just if you believe, just believe what you want to believe. At this point, nobody's going to really change your mind with whatever you believe out there. So we want to just try and get the word out there of what went on behind the scenes here. So, Danny, as we move past all that, when and how did the search get to John Sumrall? You mentioned Turnkey and working with them. How instrumental were they in finding John Sumrall, or was it really more of you or Scott? I mean, I know that you have some history in New Orleans, of course. I don't know if there's any connection there, but there's kind of a few angles I think you could attack how it got to John Sumrall. Yeah,
well, I think you kind of start with is this cycle. Like, what are the coaches out there that are available? And you kind of gather data. I think Turnkey did a fantastic job of sort of putting the landscape of all the coaches that could be on the board and doing a lot of due diligence. And I've seen more stats, I think, in the last 6 weeks than I've seen in my life about things. And so you kind of get a picture of that. And, you tend to think, okay, who are the, maybe you go with tiers or grades, however you want to do it. But like who would be like the top tier coaches? And, at this year, how it started, there'd have been like, man, if you could talk to Curt Cignetti, like that'd be a guy you'd want to talk to, right? A guy like Marcus Freeman, and a guy like Lane Kiffin. And kind of in this cycle, those were sort of the three kind of guys that jumped off the page. Now, everybody knows no matter who you get, you're guessing. Like it's a risk. The chance of anybody coming into any school and winning a national championship, it's really tough. It's really hard to do. So you're just trying to think what gives us the best chance in our situation right now. And so in that case, there was really only one coach left on the board. Marcus Freeman wasn't interested in moving. And so you focus on Lane, but then you got to say, okay, we got to be building the profile of all the other guys out there. You look at sitting head coaches for sure. You look at sitting head coaches maybe in the P4 and then the G5. You look at coordinators. We considered guys that were in the NFL. The other factor that I don't think people quite understood in this is the timing of it. You know, we in early October we're pretty quick to be without a coach, which in some ways gives you some time. But none of the coaches were really interested in talking right away. And so there was there was a bit of a dead period. And I think, you know, Lane really wanted to wait and talk until the week that they played Citadel. I guess for him, that was easier. Might have a little more energy. Or time. So we were waiting. I think a lot of the other coaches just assumed we were going to get Lane because that was one of the narratives. So they weren't all excited to talk right away. So you're kind of waiting. You're doing your due diligence. You're putting all these people together. John Sumrall was the first Zoom that we did. Had a great early conversation with this guy. It was very impressive. We kind of got off the call and we were debriefing. And I said, man, that guy's pretty impressive. And I mean, I didn't know a whole lot. I'm like, you know, he's probably gonna be moving up, huh? And Chad Chatlow said, Daddy, he goes, if you guys don't hire him, you just need to know you will be playing against him in the SEC soon. Everybody wants him. Okay. So, and then we just sort of methodically went through the list. We tended to Zoom with a lot of people first. And then if so, we would move forward and then try to get in-person meetings with people, which got really interesting because we want to keep it secret, but the coaches really want to keep it secret. They don't want that out there. So sort of planning the trips, all these things has just been like a CIA agent, you know, flying here, flying there. I can't tell you all our tricks on that, but I felt like Jason Bourne.
Hammond, Louisiana became a hot place of location.
Yeah, you never know. Can't tell you. Remember helicopters, bungee jumping. We had some parachute trips, kayaks.
So you're telling me Tom Cruise was on one of the flights?
He is. He actually got us where we need to be. So that was part of it. But so, you know, we kind of go through all that stuff, and then you kind of keep discussing like who and what, you know, is jumping out. And, you know, immediately there's things about John that were like so powerful. You know, his leadership, his edge. You know, it's a warrior game, even though it's there's finesse and there's skill players. Like it's still a combat sport, and who can lead young men into combat is a really important piece of this puzzle. And, you know, he had that obviously. And I think he had some other traits of leadership that I really admire. Like one of the things that to me set him apart from a lot of people was his dogmatic insistence on evaluation of everyone, including himself. He has a process and even a company that they use to get feedback. Like, what am I missing? What are my blind spots? Like when you find a leader that's still looking for their blind spots, that's a pretty powerful thing. Most leaders in any realm of life that I've seen, football coaches, you know, once they're the boss, they kind of feel like they have all the answers. I've heard the term, they're the smartest person in the room. And so that piece was really powerful. The big question for all of us, for me, of course, was like, okay, we wanted an offensive guy, right? That was a kind of a big key in this search. And when you move in to talk to Jon Sumrall, you're obviously missing that big piece. But he immediately, we in our Zoom, he said one of the things, he started talking about running 11 and then a lot of 10 personnel at Florida. And I said, John, what's 10 personnel? And he said, Danny, he was confused. Like, how do you not know it? I'm like, no, John, I know what 10 personnel is. It's, you know, 1 running back and 4 receivers. I just haven't seen it in years here. And so the fact that he was even talking about 4 receivers on the field at a time, you know, he was a guy that was convinced that, you know, he did what he had to win at Tulane, but to win at Florida, he'd need a new offensive coordinator. So had he been like, no, I'm coming and this is my guy, then my red flags go up. But no, he's like, I'm coming and we're going to, and here's 3 or 4 guys that I'm going after. And I think we can get them, you know, and he was very just diligent about that piece. And then, you know, as this process went on, it became also really clear that Auburn was about to sign him. Ole Miss was going to want him as soon as they were gone. Arkansas and had Kentucky been job open, they'd have been after him. Like he was not just some other guy. He was the guy that everybody wanted. And so I think it was a really great move as we began to hone in on him. Did a second trip to his house to just kind of be present. He also really got behind the concept and the idea of the GM model. And we had not hired a GM yet at that time because we really felt like the marriage of the two, but the GM search was going concurrently. And at that point, Dave Caldwell was the guy that we felt the best about. So we actually brought Dave on that last interview to kind of give John a chance to meet Dave and Dave a chance to meet John. And that went really well. And so we felt really good about that. And then we got into the negotiation. And this is just a side piece, but I'm particularly happy that we signed a guy that had an agent that was not named a certain name that seems to represent everybody else. And that I had some satisfaction in that.
Yeah, probably made it a little bit cleaner. I would imagine a little bit better of a process there. So we all know what was out there, all the noise, of course, when the pivot from Lane Kiffin to Jon Sumrall. Not giving him a whole lot of credit, for all the noise that was out there, and say, hey, Florida's where I'm going to go. Florida's where I want to go. I'm assuming he heard some of that, and this was just a job that he wanted. And look, I asked him about it at the press conference. What factors and assurances he needed to hear from Florida for him to want to take the job. So what was Florida's pitch when you guys were going through the process to Jon Sumrall?
Oh, he was clearly excited about this job from the beginning. He's been doing a phenomenal job at a school with considerably less resources and ways to get things done. Every time he's developing players and doing well, they're all leaving. So he's rebuilding each year. So I think just the job itself was very powerful. And he straight out embraced the fans. He's like, I love passion. I love passion. And if they're mad, that means they're passionate. Let's go. And he's like, I know they're going to compare me to Billy Napier, but you know what? I'm not. Let's go. And so it's every possible thing that you kind of thought maybe he wouldn't challenged him into doing it. And I think he really liked the idea of doing the GM model and like Dave, and he really liked Scott and Duke Warner, the other AD that was there. I will be working with him. He really liked him. So it was a really great sales job, great pitch. And I think we got there just in time, or Auburn would have got him. And so I feel really, really good about it.
What about on that angle, relationship with the NIL and that factor of it, and Florida victorious, and working with boosters who are going to go a long way in helping your success for a bit? Was that any, or as much as you can share there, part of the conversation of we will have the resources to do what you want to do at Florida?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's every coach. You're talking to every coach, and that's one of their questions is, kind of where are you on the rev share and where are you on the NIL and what's your sort of budget for the year? And so to kind of be able to commit to be on the top end of that across the board, I think, so yeah, that's a big part of the conversation. And I think that was a powerful package that Florida had to offer to all the coaches. So yeah, that was handled really well. We've got great support. We've got a lot of great, passionate fans, and seems like they're excited for what's next.
Sounds good. A few more right here with Danny Wuerffel taking us through the coaching search right here with the Florida Gators, and my co-host Will Miles wanted to throw a couple questions in here as well. So he goes back. Summerall said he had a long-term plan to win consistently. Can you lay out what vision for the program he communicated to the search committee and why that vision makes sense for Florida? And you kind of go into with that. I asked about assurances from Florida towards him, but what about the other way? Were there assurances that Florida needed from Sumrall? And you kind of brought it up about the offense part of it, but what were some of the key questions that Florida needed to be sold on that you're the right guy?
Well, that's just part of the whole due diligence process. But you talk about what is their plan for building a roster, and if somebody said all I care about is the the transfer portal, I'm going to build a team exclusively through the transfer portal, you'd have some concerns. But, he even said this at the press conference. He's like, the biggest thing you have to do is player retainment. You have to recruit your own players, develop your players, and give them a vision for why they want to stay. And then sort of your next base that you're building out of is recruiting. But you have to be careful now. This is something I've learned. You can't just pay 25, even if you could get 25-star kids and you pay them. Now a lot of your money is going to be in players that probably aren't going to play the first year. So another angle that's good, really a trick, or not a trick, but like a goal that everybody's got to figure out is how much of your money is on the field. Because you can have a lot of NIL money, but if it ends up being in backups, you're not maximizing that. And that's not an easy puzzle to put together. So how do you maximize that when you're talking about, high school kids, or if this was the NFL, those would be your draft class coming in. It's different. And then, third, how do you use the transfer portal? And I think his answers on all those fronts were great. He's passionate recruiter, as you talked. I think he said his hair's on fire for recruiting or something like that. Maybe you and I were recruiters and our hair was on fire too. But I think he's great at that angle of this. He's great with the kids. So I think that's powerful. The vision of how he sees everyone in the building working together and how he holds the people accountable was powerful. I also think the way that he looks at delegation and not trying to kind of micromanage all the things himself is very, very powerful. I think that's a refreshing thing to hear. So he's kind of all these different things we're checking out, things that mattered. And then again, on the offensive piece, which made me cringe a little bit at first thinking of it conceptually with this guy, was very powerful when he talked about not being prompted at all, but just to say Florida demands and needs a wide open, powerful offense, and you've got the athletes to do it. We can get those athletes. He goes, and we're going to get offensive coordinator to fit that profile. He also said something that I just thought was smart. It just makes sense to me. He's like, Danny, and I'm asking him, like, this is great. You're telling us you're going to hire an offensive coordinator. Like, how do we know you're going to do that? And he's like, well, here's one reason. He goes, most of the really good offensive coordinators are playing for coaches that have offensive head coaches, so they don't get any credit. Like, it's, Charlie Weiss, it's just all Lane Kiffin, or, the guy at Tennessee, it's all hype. He goes, Danny, when they come here and they're successful, everybody will know it wasn't me. They won't think it's me. They're going to get all the credit. They're all going to want to, like, that's just, it's a great thing to think through. I thought that was impressive. And multiple things like that made you think this guy could do it.
Yeah, I thought about that angle too with offensive coordinators under offensive coaches. So hopefully that bleeds over into Florida right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
In their next OC. So next one from Will was for you here. Success 2 years from now is blank. Success 3 years from now is blank. Like Sumrall had instant success as a first-time head coach at Troy, and then kept going with what really Fritz built at Tulane and has kept it going. As we look here at Florida, I don't know how much immediate success we expect. We'll have to see who stays on the roster and who he hires as coordinators and coaches and the staff. But looking down the road, success is what in year 2? Success is what in year 3?
I mean, for me, we're talking about college football playoff. I mean, that to me is a wide, and it's not like it's just 2 teams like back in my day, or 4 teams like for a while. So there's a lot of spots there. It's super competitive to get in, but that's something that I would be hoping and expecting in year 2 or 3, that we're fighting and in the college playoff. That I think that would be a very reasonable thing to think. We have high expectations at Florida, and he knows that, and that's why he's here.
Absolutely. There we go. That's what we wanted.
Hey, let me also say something. Is that your buddy Will? Is that the one that's stepping away from doing the writing?
Yes.
Let me just say something. Like, I've really enjoyed. He's one of the few things I get in the email, and I read kind of his stuff. So I want to give him a shout out. I think he does a great job. I was sad to hear that he was stepping away from that, but I did listen the other night when he was on explaining it. I think it was at the end of your podcast.
Yep.
And I was just so impressed with that. A guy that is stepping away from something that he's really good at, that he's passionate about, because he wants to value his family and pour into his kids and be awake on a Sunday afternoon. And like, we're talking about Lane Kiffin and Jon Sumrall and these guys who are successful and making a lot of money. But I think there's different ways to count success. And to me, that guy deserves a shout out. So congrats, Will. Thank you for being a leader in that way.
Here, Danny. Absolutely. He told me Saturday. He kind of been hinting about it, and then he was at the game. He lives up in Philadelphia, so he didn't get to come down to many Gator games.
Oh, wow.
And his parents live in Gainesville, so he was in town for Thanksgiving, and we went off to the side a little bit from the tailgate. We talked a little bit of business, and that's when he let me know still wants to be part of Gators Breakdown, which I am very, very thankful for, but that he was going to step away from reading reactions. So I'm so glad that you did that. He's gonna get a kick out of this when he sees it. So, big move there for you, Danny, and thank you so much. Keeping it going here. I think we're good right there. I'm glad you caught us up on the search and what we can expect from Jon Sumrall, how he got here, and certainly after that opening press conference, I think Gator Nation was sold a little bit more than what they were beforehand. So, if we could talk a little bit of football right quick, Danny, before I let you go. Obviously, DJ Lagway at the quarterback spot, the position you hold oh so dear at the University of Florida, and did a lot of great things on that field. A little surprised how it turned out for him, and what steps would you look for him to be making next? I'm not even talking about if it's at Florida or not at Florida or anything like that, but I'm just assuming he's here. What do you want to see? What steps do you want to see DJ Lagway take, and maybe how he should go about this offseason?
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to say, and he would say this, that it was a really disappointing season. So I don't think there would be words that I'd even have to say, because I think he would say that for himself personally. A lot of people covered this, but I don't think you can overstate. People back when he was hurt in spring, they said, well, he'll be okay in the summer. And then he was hurt in the summer, and then he got hurt and wasn't able to do even in the training camp. And it's like, well, he'll be fine for the game. And I was like, no. Like, one of the reasons I could throw the ball to Chris Doering on a corner out every time in stride is because, like, we threw that route 5 million times in January and February and March. And the amount of reps that you get with your receivers and processing is invaluable. Even more so for a kid who is a true freshman and didn't play a lot. It's not like he was Tom Brady in his 12th year and, missed a little bit. So I think that was really, really a tough thing for any young person to go through to go in without even developing. You combine that with the fact that, just because of his profile and his history and his NIL numbers and all that stuff, he's kind of the savior of the program. That kind of creates, for a kid in that position, psychologically, there's this weight of expectation, but you're not developed. So then I think when things start to go wrong, you can have some crisis of confidence. You cannot see the field well. It's just part of when things happen. You don't see things go faster versus slower. And I also think that this particular offense has some positives and some negatives. The Napier offense, I think one of the negatives is it's really complicated for a quarterback. There's times where I'd sit in there and I'd be like, by the time I got done processing the original lineup and the personnel and the original shift and then the second shift and the first fake motion and the second motion and then read the start of the Mac to the will, and by the time I got the ball in my hand, I was just tired mentally. It's like, how am I supposed to look off a safety? I just used all my brain power just to get the ball snapped. So I feel like that was difficult for him too. I think there's other offenses that are just much simpler and conceptually and easier. So, and then you just got some habits as a quarterback. I think when he knew where he was throwing, if it was man coverage and he was on platform, he was just absolutely amazing.
Yep.
He can in weird situations make deep throws like I've never seen. But, when he's in his zone coverage and he's going through his progressions, I think he gets out of position, and then it's just really hard to make a good throw when you kind of got out of position. You're throwing off wrong leverage or your wrong base. And so those are things he's got to clean up. I don't know any inside of this right now, but I would imagine there's going to be quite a quarterback competition here coming up. And I don't know how that plays out, or I don't know how NIL plays into that. But I think I respect that DJ has always wanted to be a Gator. Last year I think he was part of the reason that team held together. I think it's part of the reason that people didn't leave. It's part of the reason we have the roster we do now. So I think his loyalty meant a lot, and I really appreciate him. He asked me to watch film with him soon, so we'll be doing some of that. And also, like some people have mentioned this too, we've got a pretty dynamic guy in there at number 2. Trammell, I think, has the capability to be an outstanding quarterback, and I haven't really watched Will Griffin coming in, but he seems to be really prolific as well. And so I'm sure it'll have a lot going on that, but that'll be fun to see it play out.
For sure. And then one more angle on that. You mentioned almost maybe watching some film with Lagway coming up, and hopefully I'm assuming film of whatever the offensive coordinator will be coming in at Florida. What would you be looking for if you were Sumrall when it comes to an offensive coordinator?
Well, I think somebody that's creative and innovative. I think someone that has shown that they can do multiple things. I love the idea. Sumrall said something the other day that it really stuck with me. We want the defense to have to cover every blade of grass. So when I think of that, I think of both horizontally and vertically. And how do you stretch the field in both dimensions as far as you can? Because the more you can stretch the field in those dimensions, and then you've got guys like Vernell Brown, Dallas Wilson, and some of these burners that are coming in. I love Aiden Mizell and Tank as well. Like, we got a lot of good players that you get them out in space, man, and just dynamic things can happen. And then when that happens and you've got a battering ram as a running back and there's not as many people plugging up the hole, that's dangerous too. So I love that idea. I do like of using different tempos. And, he said something too that I really appreciated. He said, Danny, you can try to build your ideal system and find players to fit it, but you also get certain players and you've got to be able to adjust to what they do. And so, like, I do think an offensive coordinator that has been exposed to multiple types of systems that can adjust to the players that they have would be important. But man, we don't want to how to figure out how to win every game by 2 points, man. Let's win the close games when we have to, but let's blow some people out. Somebody was telling me, in fact, Chad, this is maybe too much information. In one of our first calls with Chad Chatlos, he said, one of the stats we want to look at is what are all these coaches' records in close games? Because, the SEC is tough. It's like the NFL, and all the games are going to be close. And I was like, what Spurrier's record was in close games? Not good. We just didn't have any. Let's go do that. So that's what I'm looking for. Let's win some games by 2, 3, 4 touchdowns and get out of there happy. How's that sound?
I would absolutely love it. I mean, and what we've seen in recent years in college football, though, is especially in the SEC, there are a lot of one-score games in the way that, hey, Alabama's not blowing teams out like they were. Georgia's not blowing teams out like they were anymore. There's a lot of one-score close games now. Well, let's go back to 1990 one more time and let's bring somebody in who bucks the trend. And we do have some big point spreads by the time the final whistle blows for a game. But and one more thing on that, Danny, that I absolutely love, because I've said it when you guys did it, and this is what I loved about Steve Spurrier's offense more than anything. You guys dictated what was on the field, not the other way around. The defense dictates you. You guys dictated the game, and that's a big selling point for me on offense.
Yep. No, I think you got to be aggressive. You can do that. I think it's a balance. I agree with you. And, if you want to run the ball and they put 11 guys on the line of scrimmage, you probably should throw it. And if you want to throw the ball and they put, got 9 guys in coverage, you should probably run it. There's some truth to that. But man, I saw some too many times I see, just the way that a defense is playing against their offense. I'm like, oh man, if anyone ever played us like that, there's about an 85% chance we're scoring a touchdown on that play. So and then we'd run a bubble screen for a yard or a run up the middle. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed like defenses baited the last offense into what to do. We know what you're going to do. We'll bait you into it. And there you go. It's just game over at that point.
Yeah. You got to give defenses are better. There's more sophistication. If Spurrier, we're running our system right now, we probably have to make a lot of adjustments, and I doubt we'd have that. So you do want to blow people out. but you've got to figure out how to do a really good in one score games. Like right now, I would give Kirby Smart a lot of credit.
Yeah.
They're having a phenomenal year. They beat some teams pretty good, but they've had to adjust, and they've been in dogfights, no pun intended, and they've won most of them.
For real. Danny, I cannot thank you enough for reaching out, coming on Gators Breakdown. Fan base, Gator Nation, certainly go be excited for it. Gators Breakdown Plus members, I see them in the Discord right now. I was like, hey guys, we're recording right now. And they're like, you're recording with the GOAT. So Danny Wuerffel, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, 13-year-old me right now would not believe I'm in this spot. So I can, one more time, big thank you for coming on Gators Breakdown.
You're welcome. You're doing a great job. I'm really excited about being a Gator. We talked about Jon Sumrall. I'm excited. I think the new kind of model with the GM is innovative and is going to really create a better system and stability and a better roster. I think it's going to let the coaches coach better instead of doing all the other things that they had to do. And so, I tell you what, if we win an SEC or get to the playoffs, I'll come back on your show. And so we'll make that a deal. You got my number. You reach out, and then of course, if the coach isn't very good, don't blame me. No, I'm kidding. I love it. It's going to be great. Go Gators.
Go Gators. And joining me now right here on Gators Breakdown, Jake Weinstock, editor-in-chief at Fear the Wave Collective and co-host of the Wavecast, covering the Tulane school where, of course, John Sumrall comes from. And let's get to know a little bit more about John Sumrall. Jake, hey, I cannot thank you enough. First of all, just kind of short notice and agreeing to come on Gators Breakdown right here and letting us know more about John Sumrall.
Happy to do it, man. Love Coach Sumrall. Really thankful for his 2 years. So seen a lot of negative stuff out there on X from, fans of your school. And, I'm happy to correct any misconceptions that may be out there as best I possibly can.
Well, it's funny how it turns out and kind of the nature of everything. Of course, Florida's in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes and he's target number one and it doesn't work out. And in some ways, it looks like settling for the next candidate and it's John Sumrall. But then you and I were talking about before we recorded, hey, yeah, there was a press conference, an opening press conference, and seemed to sway a little bit of Gator Nation when he was up there and discussing in front of the microphone his first time, kind of just being able to tell Gator Nation, hey, this is who I am and this is what we're going to do. So certainly a check mark in the early stages of John Sumrall and trying to win over Gator Nation a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're a Florida fan and you have had a negative reaction to John Sumrall's hire, the rumors that he was going to be on your short list of candidates or that he was going to be hired, and you were swayed by Monday's press conference, I mean, I have to ask, did you know anything about him prior to Monday? Because what you saw for 50 minutes on Monday is exactly who the guy is, especially, the second half of his appearance where he's just taking questions. There is no prepared script. There's no prepared speech or anything like that. He is the most authentic person I think you are ever going to meet in college athletics. And we've all heard the stories of coaches who leave a program, and I can't remember if it was Tuberville at some point, where he's at dinner and gets up from the table to take a phone call, and it's whatever school that he left to next, and he never even comes back to the table. Or, there's stories out there about Brian Kelly like that when he left Notre Dame. I mean, this Sumrall is the most real, authentic, empathetic man, head coach that's out there that I've ever heard of. I mean, when he was hired at Tulane 2 years ago, he was hired on a Friday, 5 days into the transfer portal being open. And he was frankly not willing to come down to New Orleans until Sunday afternoon ahead of a Monday press conference, because he really felt like he needed 2 days to say goodbye to the relation to people there, players, parents of players, people close to the program, people connected with the university. In their season, they were going to a bowl game, but they'd already played their conference championship game. They'd already won their conference championship game. And that's just, again, that's just who the guy is. None of that, I can assure you, Gator Nation, none of that is an act. None of it is forced. That's just who the man is. And I'll try not to be super long-winded here, but my favorite John Sumrall story personally is last season in 2024, we had a road game at North Texas, funny enough, who were playing this Friday night in the conference championship game, for a chance to go to the playoff, I might add, in Denton. And I was lucky enough to be on the plane with the team for the whole trip, the whole weekend. It was an 11 a.m. game, and John, again, super inviting, super welcoming. I got to walk through. Well, for an 11 a.m. game, walk through at the hotels at 6 a.m. Breakfast buffet is served in the ballroom or the conference center at the hotel at 7. Team at 8, on the buses at 8:30 to the stadium by 8:45. So I went to the walkthrough. I went to go work out. After working out, I go grab my plate, and I'm just going to eat as fast as I can. Because I want to go to the team meeting, of course. Who wouldn't? I got to shower, I got to shave, I got to pack, I got to get my bag on the bus, and I just pick an empty table in the ballroom because I'm going to eat as fast as I possibly can. And John Sumrall sees that, right, and just walks over and sits next to me. I'm not on the team. I'm not on the staff. I'm a volunteer with the collective. And I'm a donor, but not a major donor. And, he just couldn't let it stand, I think, that someone on the trip with his team was, going to eat by themselves. And so I wound up missing the team meeting because he sat there for 15, 20 minutes or so. And we just talked ball. We talked life. We talked about his first stint at Tulane, back from 2012 to 2014. And, it was, I just remember thinking in the moment, like, man, I could not imagine, Nick Saban or Brian Kelly or really any other, insert your college football head coach here doing this ever, let alone 4 hours before they're going to coach a pretty pivotal conference road game. But that is exactly who the guy is.
So I'll have to admit, 4 years ago, I did this with Billy Napier. And I wanted to get to know Billy Napier and reached out to Louisiana media. And, we got to know Billy Napier and everybody got hyped and all that. So, of course, there's now Jon Sumrall's the hire at Florida and the community. And, of course, the comparison of coming from a G5 or definitely not coming from the Sun Belt, coming from the AAC. And I don't know how well you know Billy Napier or the reputation of Billy Napier or anything, but just on the Jon Sumrall part, and maybe a lot of what you just said, but in the comparison of Billy Napier or even anybody else coming from the G5 and making the jump up to the SEC, is there anything there that's just like, hey, don't – and Jon Sumrall said in his press conference at Florida on Monday, look, don't compare me. I'm my own guy. He's his own guy. We're different. I don't make that comparison. Just because you're a reporter doesn't mean you're like every other reporter out there. So I like the way he phrased that. But maybe to dispel, I maybe guess some of the concern from Gator Nation of another coach trying to make the jump up and maybe quote unquote learn the big job on the job.
Yeah, I get that. I totally subscribe in football and sports to the ex-girlfriend theory. Right. And you see this in the NFL all the time. The soft players coach, defensive coordinator, I'm not going to give you a name, but gets fired after 3 years. Well, you're going the exact opposite, right? If it was a defensive guy that got fired, you're hiring the young whiz kid that calls plays on offense. If it was the laid back guy that gets fired, you're hiring the hard nosed, Bill Parcells disciple or Bill Belichick disciple. What I would say is, in addition to just, who the person is, the two things I would tell you are number one, Billy Napier didn't do it for 4 years at a really high level in the group of 5 at 2 different schools. Billy Napier did it at one school, and I'm not here to trash Billy Napier by any means. I'm just telling you that's a fact. Tulane is in its 4th consecutive conference championship game this weekend. there are only 3 schools in the entire country that are in their 4th consecutive conference championship game. That would be Tulane, Boise State, and Georgia. Narrowing that scope, there are only 2 head coaches in the entire country who are coaching in their 4th consecutive conference championship game this weekend, John Sumrall and Kirby Smart. The difference, David, is that John Sumrall has done it at 2 different schools. So, he went back-to-back Sun Belt championships, won them both in his 2 years at Troy. We played in the American Conference Championship game last year in West Point and lost to Army, who was ranked in the CFP at the time. And we have a chance, Friday night, win and into the playoff after tonight's rankings. So that's number one. Number two, I would say I knew John a very, very little bit when he was here. Again, I said earlier, from December of 2011 through December of 2014, he was here for 3 seasons as a 29 to 32-year-old co-defensive coordinator, and his first, real assistant job at an FBS school had come from 1AA San Diego, as your fans know from yesterday's press conference. And number one, the growth in him over the 9 years that he was gone was immense. And you would expect that, right? 32 to I guess 41 when he came back. A lot of different SEC experience. But the growth in him just in the 2 years that he has been here, literally two years ago, I think next week we had his press conference when he took the job here, has been immense, in my opinion. I think he's gotten better at game management decisions. We were playing, he's got more confident in them as well. We were playing Army earlier this year. We were playing poorly. And if any of your, if anyone watches Army, their game is to try and shorten the number of possessions, make sure each team only possesses the ball 3-ish times per half, make that margin for error razor thin, and really just kind of lean on you and frustrate you and hold the ball. And we got back into the game and we wound up tying it with just under 2 minutes to go, and at 17 apiece, I believe. And we really had not quickly gotten off the field all day. I don't think we had gotten a 3-and-out at any point in that ball game. And 1:45 to go, they're on their own 25. David, I think a lot of coaches would say Army can't move the ball quickly. Let's play for overtime here. We're at home. And instead, they ran for, I think, 4 or 5 yards on first down. And John just started burning his timeouts. And he was going to trust his team, and he was going to be aggressive, and he was going to trust them and believe in them to go get that 3-and-out. That's exactly what happened. We got the ball back and scored a game-winning touchdown with about 25 seconds to go. So I think he's grown in areas like that, but then just globally. You guys saw it in the ball game last year. We played a kid at quarterback named Ty Thompson in the Gasparilla Bowl. And Ty Thompson was a transfer from Oregon, and he was a very highly sought after high school recruit. He was, certainly on paper, I think he was the plan to be the starting quarterback here in 2024. And they paired him with a kid named Kai Horton, who had made 5 spot starts here behind Michael Pratt over the years. Darian Mensah, who had been a who was entering his redshirt freshman year, had 1 FBS offer coming out of high school, and then a true freshman that the prior staff had committed. Those were the 4 quarterbacks on scholarship. They very clearly missed on Ty Thompson, and we would not have won 9 games last year. I hate to tell Mr. Thompson that he played every single game at quarterback. They absolutely fell into / developed Darian Mensah, and that wound up being a saving grace for the 2024 season. But he learned from that, right? He didn't go out this year. His staff didn't. They did not put all of their eggs into one quarterback basket, even with a pretty significant level of group of 5 resources, right? They took 3 kids in the December portal. They took TJ Finley. They took Caden Samanza from Ball State, Finley from Western Kentucky. And then they took Donovan Leary, who narrowly lost the starting quarterback job at Illinois before the 2024 season. Then in the spring portal, they added Brendan Sullivan from Iowa when Finley, had some issues and had to leave school. And then Jake Retzlaff became available after his issues at BYU, and then they added him too. And it just, again, it's one of those things where you see this all the time in college football these days, where a guy will, I've done it this way my whole career. We've won here. Well, man, I hate to tell you this, but times have changed. And, which brings me to my third and final point. Billy Napier may have had a ton of success at ULL, but he has not had, success as a head coach anywhere in the NIL era.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, period. Right. I mean, it is a different thing. Look at how Clemson has performed, outside of really kind of a pop-up season last year in this era. It's just different. And Jon has embraced that. He's been at the forefront of that. So he's a guy that is adaptable. I promise you, he sounds like a linebacker from Alabama who played at Kentucky. I promise you, David, he is the smartest human being in any room that he is in. He is always the smartest guy in the room. He pretends not to be. That is the only thing about him that may be inauthentic, but I promise you he is the smartest person in any room. And I think it's probably says a ton about what he thinks of Florida and Florida's place in this era of college football, that he would leave Tulane for Florida. And, I think I was just,
and I'm glad you brought that up, Jake, because that was the question I asked him yesterday in the press conference. It was, what assurances were you getting from Florida to make you either want to leave Tulane or not go to Auburn or not wait for Ole Miss or any of these other jobs out there? Because look, I'll go back to the coaching search. It was Lane Kiffin, and that was the top target. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. And for the Florida side, it might have been, well, maybe the alignment wasn't there. Maybe working for Scott Strickland wasn't there. So it was a pertinent question on my end to say, well, why is it attractive to Jon Sumrall? And I'm glad you brought that up, because now from what you just said and told us right here is he's probably going to do his due diligence in finding out, hey, this is a job that I can go be successful at. And so hearing what you just said, pairing it with what I asked him yesterday and how he answered it, was like, hey, I wanted to make sure we were getting alignment. And that's, what we really needed to hear after some rumors of how, the coaching search went. Hopefully everybody's, telling the truth there. But from your reputation of Jon Sumrall there, that certainly seems like, hey, he gets it. And he's going to be asking the right questions that Florida is moving in the direction they need to move in.
I can promise you, I can bet you my next 50 paychecks that Jon Sumrall would not have taken this job if he did not believe that in 2026, 2027, in the late 2020s, you can still win a national championship at Florida, period. I think there are some coaches out there, and it's all about, the paycheck and the size of the chair, right? Like, of the pecking order of the conferences, which one is the logo that's on the sleeve of my, right? And I can tell you that when he was the head coach at Troy, right, and making $1 million, if he really wanted to be the head coach at Mississippi State, SEC school, and quadruple his salary, or wanted to be the head coach at Duke, quadruple his salary, he would have. He could have. Instead, he chose to make less money to come to Tulane at a place where he knew he could be successful, because he looked around and he saw the resources that we had. And I'm so thankful for that, because him choosing us validated that we were not a pop-up school, right? The Willie Fritz thing was not a flash in the pan, that we were capable of sustained success. And this is a guy, I said, he's the smartest guy in any room he's in. He sees the college football landscape incredibly well. So it validated, hopes I had about where we were as a program 2 years ago, that he picked us. It continued to validate, what I felt about us as a program when he turns down, reportedly, doubling his salary to go to North Carolina, or maybe an opportunity at UCF or at West Virginia last cycle. I genuinely believe that based on those decisions, he was not leaving Tulane for a place that he was not leaving Tulane for anywhere other than somewhere he could go and contend for the national championship every year, right? He wanted to be at Tulane because it was a place where he could contend to be in the college football playoff every year. He wanted a path to do that. And the 12-team format with the 5 auto bids gave him a path to do that. And both years, Thanksgiving, our playoff hopes ended not until Thanksgiving last year. We're into December and they're very much alive. Like I said, win in. He would not have picked Florida had he not felt that he could win a national championship there. And I'm sure you have, listeners who are going to hear this and say, well, of course you can win a national championship at Florida. Obviously, right? Okay, well,
it's been some time.
Well, A, it's been some time. B, you have not appeared in the college football playoff rankings not even for a single week since COVID. And C, I hate to tell you this, blue blood fans, not Florida specifically, just globally.
Yeah.
Welcome to the era of parity. In my opinion, in terms of resources, right, there are 136 FBS programs out there. School number 10, and just in resources, right, is closer to school number 40 than ever before. Now, in terms of resources, schools 1 through 5 may be further away from school number 10 than ever before, and we can talk about that another time. And
it's like recruiting rankings.
It's what you have done in the past matters less now, in my view, in college football than ever before. And if you're someone listening to this who doesn't believe that, take a look at what's happening with the Penn State search right this very moment. Right. We live in a world where Vanderbilt could get into maybe not after the rankings tonight, but Vanderbilt could get into the college football playoff. Indiana is going to be in their second consecutive college football playoff. We live in a world where Texas Tech is going to get a bye in the college football playoff, a school with no history of success. But you know what they do have? They have some oil billionaires who want to be really good at football, right? Their history no longer matters. Tulane is going to be, Tulane, as I said, 4th consecutive conference championship game this weekend, ranked in the college football playoff poll for the 4th year in a row. This is, again, we won the Cotton Bowl in 2022, finished top 10 before John got here. This is a school, David, that until this year had not won 7 games in 4 consecutive seasons in the 123 history of playing football. And then we won 8 games for the first time or 8 games 4 years in a row for the first time. And then now we're up to 9 games, right? Because we won 9 last year. It's a school that from 1935 till 2022 did not win 6 conference games, but 1 time in 1998 when we went 12-0. And yet, we can be in the playoff. Right. We have been in the top 25 rankings, all 3 polls for multiple weeks, 4 seasons in a row now. And we have the opportunity now to again, finish in those rankings, certainly if we win this game on Friday. And it's a school with no history of success. Resources now in this player empowerment era with unlimited transfers, with NIL, with rev share. That is the name of the game. And I'm telling you, I would not, be so bold as to have this conversation, try to have this conversation with John, but I'm just telling you that by virtue of him strongly considering and taking your job, that should tell you what he thinks about the resources you have. He's not just taking your job because you're an SEC school and you can pay him $7.5 million. Okay. I can promise you there are other SEC schools that were open this cycle that would have loved to have hired him if, let's say, Florida didn't and Auburn wasn't interested as they reportedly were, and Ole Miss wasn't interested as they reportedly were, that he would not have taken because he does not believe that you can win a national championship, I would guess, at X school or Y school. Florida, on the other hand, clearly is somewhere he thinks you can, and that the guy's never lost anywhere. So I'm going to have to, I'll be surprised if he doesn't, or if he doesn't have a tremendous amount of success.
And part of that, and he talked about this in the press conference as well, maybe the speed of getting there. He wants to run right away, and one right away at Troy, one right away at Tulane. And I want to marry this to a lot of what you just said about resources and the new game of college football and having to use the transfer portal, of course. And look, I remember covering the Gasparilla Bowl last year and doing some game prep for Tulane. It was like, all right, well, here's the stats. These guys aren't playing.
Yeah.
And these guys aren't going to be now part of this 2025 team. So I guess in my timeline of expectations of wins, marry that with, all right, Florida's team, who knows what it's going to look like.
Sure.
But there is a proven track record, even just coming off of this year of, all right, the roster got hit pretty hard and I had a plan to attack it. And here we are competing for a college football playoff spot.
Yeah. I would say this globally, and then I'll get more granular and focus on John. I would say I think it is not being talked about enough nationally what one transfer portal window is going to do to schools who are in the first year of a head coach at a new place. I think if you look at things historically, just going back the last 2-3 years, the data that we had, 2 years, the data that we have, very often first-year head coaches, even successful ones, will go to a place, will go through spring ball, and will add in the spring portal significant pieces to their fall roster, to their lineup. And I'll use John as an example, right? So when he got to Tulane, we went through spring practice in 2024. He added 5 opening day starters in the spring portal on that 2024 team. And I don't mean a kicker and a left guard, David. I mean both starting cornerbacks on the outside boundary in the field, an edge rusher, a left tackle, and an off-ball linebacker who, Sam Howard, who's one of our best players and I think was on one of the all-conference teams that came out today, if I'm not mistaken. So with the removal of the spring portal and there just being one portal window in January, I do think globally it's going to be more challenging for first-year head coaches anywhere, and that would apply to Tulane, right? We're in the middle of a coaching search right now, obviously. That's why you and I are talking. But what I would tell you is I don't know much about your roster, right? I remember the bowl game from last year. I don't know the state of it. I would think for you to have any chance of being successful in 2026, not only are you going to have to, sure, add some players, maybe some key players at some key spots, but you're going to have to retain the best of what you have.
For sure.
Period. You just hired the guy that is going to give you the best chance to do that, I think, because you saw some of it on social media. You see it in his interaction with players. You see it in his interaction with people who don't matter, like me, right? It is like his God's gift to make people feel valued. And, he did a phenomenal job of holding our roster together in January of 2023 into 2024 when he got here. And these are kids that are strangers to him. These are kids that were recruited by a prior staff. And it wasn't a fired staff, David. It was not, hey, this Napier thing didn't work out, we're going to let him go. It was a staff that left to take a job, jobs at Houston in the Big 12, which, it is a better conference than the American for sure. But it wasn't so much of a step up that we didn't have a bunch of kids that could play there. And, it's been reported, right? There were assistants that remained behind, but had offers that they accepted to go to Houston who maybe were accused of encouraging certain, good players to enter the portal and maybe follow them to that school in Texas named after a city, so it was a very, very pivotal moment. And when John talks about the guys that stayed, a lot of the guys that stayed gave us a chance to be immediately successful here. And so you look at our 2024 team and, the right tackle was a holdover who stayed. Both guards were holdovers who stayed. The quarterback was a holdover who stayed. The running back was one of the best players on our team in 2023, Mekhi Hughes. He stayed. one of our two of our three best receivers were guys that had stayed. Patrick Jenkins, a pretty elite at the group of five level 3 technique, was a guy that had stayed. Tyler Grubbs, a leader in the locker room and an off-ball linebacker, good player, had stayed. He got a lot of people who really didn't know him at all to buy into him in a very short amount of time when they had the opportunity to go play for the guy that recruited them, some of them. And, I would be surprised if you're not going to find something similar with the best of your roster, that he's going to do everything within his power and he will be successful retaining those kids and getting those kids to buy in and be excited, have them all saying it's great to be a Florida Gator. And then, certainly I'm sure he and Dave Caldwell will attract what talent they can in January. But as far as a record prediction, I have not looked at your schedule. My wife went to South Carolina, so I am very aware that you host the Gamecocks at some point. Maybe you and I will have to catch up for that game if we make it.
For sure. Yeah.
She and I try to do a Carolina game or two a year, in contrast to the 12 to 14 Tulane games I drag her to. But I would have to think in year one. Again, I don't know who your non-con is, but I would think with going to 9 conference games, I would not be surprised if he can't get you 6 of them.
Yeah. Good deal. And Jake, before we sign off here, I don't mean to take this to the left turn, and maybe part of what you just kind of discussed there. But if there are some concerns or anything we should be on the lookout for of maybe why this wouldn't work out, or maybe some things to look out for early on. It could even be from the Florida angle for all I know, but or maybe there's not, because as you said and we've pointed out, he's won everywhere he's been, and look, it's only been 4 years. I think we all know that, so it's still in the early stages of his coaching tenure, but and maybe concerns isn't the right word, but I guess if it doesn't work out in the long run or anything short term, anything we should be on the lookout for?
It's really hard to answer that without seeing what type of staff he's going to put together, right? Who he's going to bring. I saw the reports today about defensive coordinator. I think that's an excellent hire. Yeah. I think Greg Gasparotto here, who's been with him for 3 seasons now as his DC at 2 stops, has done a great job. But I think that clearly is an indication that he's not just going to migrate his entire staff, which doesn't always work, right? I mean, I don't know what Napier did when he got there, but
that's what he did. Mostly.
That's what he did. Okay. So I can tell you that, we were talking about Georgia Southern before we came on. When Willie Fritz came here, that's exactly what he did. And eventually he realized that, he needed different voices in the rooms, so to speak. And it's not anything against the guys that he had, but, he wound up replacing the offensive coordinator that had been with him for a decade with a guy named Will Hall, who's back on our staff now. And, is a really, really strong football mind, good leader of men. I would say, without knowing how his staff is going to shake out, that's tough to answer. He certainly needs to get the offensive coordinator position right, because John, for all his talents, is not an offensive play caller. He's not going to pretend to be. So that would be number one. And then number two, his 2 teams here were different from his 2 teams at Troy in one pretty interesting area. And that is, and I don't know if it's fluky or not, but just penalties. We have been one of the 2 most penalized teams in the country the last 2 years. And I don't mean top 5, but certainly I think I should have looked it up before I came on here, but I'd say top 30 or top 40.
Enough to notice.
Yeah, enough to notice, right? And exactly, enough to notice. So, that is certainly something where his teams could improve, or hopefully we don't have 10 penalties on Friday night, but
which, as long as you tell us there's not double numbers of the same number on the field,
no, none of that. Absolutely not.
A lot of 12 players instead of 11 on the field, or
No.
stuff like that. We're probably okay with
None of that.
your football
None of
penalties
that.
after what we've just seen.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's hard to nitpick too much, when the guy went 9-3 in the regular season last year. The 3 losses were to Kansas State, who was ranked inside the top 15 at the time, in a game that arguably got stolen from us by a Big 12 officiating crew. Oklahoma in Norman, who was ranked inside the top 15 at the time. Memphis, who won 10 or 11 games last year. Those are the 3 regular season losses. You lose to a ranked team in the conference championship. Of course, we had, obviously, with our opt-outs and our quarterback situation, we had 0 chance to beat you in the Gasparilla Bowl, 0. And yet that was a competitive game through 3 quarters. It was 9-0, I think, at one point. And I remember thinking, God, if we had, if we just had our quarterback, and his head was on straight, this might be a nail biter for everybody. And then, this year he beats 2 Power 4 opponents. I don't know how many wins over Power 4 opponents Florida has. Wins over Power 4 opponents that are bowl eligible that Florida has, but John has 2, and the 2025 Tulane Green Wave have 2. I can tell you that Tennessee has 0.
Yeah, Texas and Mississippi State were the 2. Yeah.
Louisiana State University has 1. Clemson, I think, got to 6, maybe 7 wins. But his 2 losses this year, he lost in Oxford to Ole Miss, and that was a 45-3 game in the fourth quarter for sure. Would have liked that to have been a bit more competitive. Hard place to go play and win ever. Certainly without your left tackle was not easy. And then, the one that I think most Tulane fans are talking about is went on the road at UTSA back in October on a Thursday night and did not lose, David. Got killed. And, that's a program that until last week had not lost a conference home game in that building since 2019. So there's not a lot to nitpick, man. I mean, there's just not. I like
the way you said that. It would be nitpicking if
absolutely, right. I mean, gosh, you know what? He should have beaten East Carolina by more. And, I mean, his teams, for the most part, have found a way to win. I could sit here and explain.
I'm glad you said that because I didn't want to keep you too much longer. But in some of the what's got on our nerves so much about the Billy Napier aspect of it was no feel for the game and critical critical mistakes and critical moments and those things, and or the things that didn't seem so big but just kept adding up, almost ignoring special teams for first couple of years there until finally made a change, and it helped in some regards, but either it was too reactionary, not enough dictating. It just seemed like it was always a reaction under Billy Napier instead of moving forward and dictating everything on your own pace.
I'll try to keep it under 60 seconds for you or 30 seconds for you. I think he is improving in the in-game stuff. I really believe that. Where I think he is excellent in that area is, you mentioned feel for the game. He's going to have a great feel for his team. So if his team, he feels, is primed to convert a 4th and 3 on your 11, the fourth down decision bot may say kick it. He may go for it. Right. He is going to be aggressive. He is going to lean into his players. And so when he says he wants to build a player-driven program, that does not just apply to how he treats people in the meeting rooms or what happens when you pass someone in the hallway or who gets a C on their chest or anything like that. Right. He is going to be really in tune with how his team is operating and how his team is functioning at any given moment, on any given day, at any given time during a game. So, I mentioned the 4th down stop or the 3 and out he got against Army. He was clearly very well aware that they had, tableted the heck out of this thing, and they were ready to go defensively, and they were amped up, and he trusted them to go make 3 plays in a row. And so, as a former athlete, I don't know what else you want other than a coach who's going to believe in you and is going to put you in a position he feels to succeed. So I think he's going to be really, really good at that stuff. And this is an appreciating asset you have here. This is a guy that is 43 years old and is still growing and is still trying to get better. He is excellent. Don't get me wrong. But I think, the John Sumrall that you're going to see at 45, at 47, at 50 is going to be even to a higher level. And, kudos to Florida. Lane Kiffin included, they have made the best hire of this cycle, period.
Jake, man, can't thank you enough for hopping on Gators Breakdown, giving us this deep dive into Jon Sumrall, Florida's new head coach, editor-in-chief, right there at the Fear the Wave Collective. One more time. Awesome dive in there for Jon Sumrall. Gator Nation, like I said, it took a little bit, but I think once he got in front of us all, he had a lot of Gator Nation sold that he can be, turning this thing around and heading it in the right direction. So anything else, Jake, you want to say, man?
No, just that a lot of your fan base needs to scrub their X history, because Old Takes Exposed, I'm sure is going to be ready to roll, if they don't. So beware. All
right, then. Co-host of the Wavecast as well. So if game, like you said, Friday night. So if Florida fans want to, check it out this week, you have a game preview and I guess review coming up. And hey, you know what? Honestly, hopefully you got some college football playoff games to talk about as well.
That would be great.
All right, Jake. Hey, thank you so much, man.
You bet. Thank you.